welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Derek Terrell, and I'm the Director of Member Engagement here at the Coalition for College. We're using the Zoom webinar feature today, and the Q&A function is enabled. So feel free to ask any of your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll try to answer those during the Q&A portion at the end. So I'm going to share a little bit of information about the Coalition for College and the work that we do. The Coalition is more than 150 colleges and universities that have a proven commitment to access, affordability, and student success. And so Coalition colleges, we believe, are smart college choices because of that commitment that they all share, and they're dedicated to graduating students on time with low or no debt, and that includes those who have been historically excluded and underrepresented in higher education. So members of the Coalition provide a variety of smart college choices for students to explore and apply to with a wide range of student body sizes, as well as levels of selectivity. And still collectively, Coalition schools outperform the national averages by about 17% when it comes to retention and graduation rates. So when finalizing your college list, a really great place to start is the Coalition for College, the over 150 colleges that make up the Coalition for College. So the Coalition and its members work to help students learn about, prepare for, and apply to college. And you can follow us on our Instagram to bring some of this insight and inspiration related to all things college right to your feed. And of course, if you have any questions following the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us via email at info@coalitionforcollege.org. So we have some amazing Coalition schools that are joining us here tonight. Olin College of Engineering, the University of Chicago, University of Delaware, Wesleyan University, and Vanderbilt University. So before we kick it off with the Q&A, I'm going to ask our presenters to actually introduce themselves and then share a little bit about their institutions. So we'll go ahead and start with Susan.
Thanks, Derek. My name is Susan Hartley-Brisson. I'm the Director of Admission at Olin College of Engineering. Olin is a small all-engineering institution located just outside the city of Boston, Massachusetts. At Olin, we are committed to the idea that engineering should be for everyone, meaning that engineering should be in service to everyone, and that engineering education should also be accessible to everyone. And we do that through a mix of collaborative project-based learning, and we believe strongly in the opportunity for students to have impact in their education in the greater world.
And hello, everyone. I'm Veronica Hawad. I'm one of the deputy directors in the undergraduate admissions office at the University of Chicago. UChicago is in my hometown, Chicago. And we are a university in that we have graduate and professional schools on the same campus as our college. We have one undergraduate college. It is a liberal arts college, which means we love learning a little bit about everything. We're a residential institution. Our students live on campus. There are about 7,000 total. And we're known for our really fun and weird application questions. Even if you don't think you will ever apply to UChicago, I encourage you to go online and look at the questions. They're really good prompts for just starting to think about how to think about some of these questions. So thank you all for being here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daryl Edmonds. I am the Deputy Director of Admissions at the University of Delaware. University of Delaware was founded in 1743. One of the oldest universities in the country, depending on who you talk to, be number 6 or number 7. We are a land grant, sea grant, and space grant university. So we are charged with tackling some of the world's biggest problems and issues. And we take that on head on and full steam. Over 150 majors and minors. We also have the first and one of the top ranked study abroad programs in the country. And we are happy to be here tonight with Coalition and our colleagues and fellow universities from around the country. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good to be with you. My name is Amin Abdulmalik Gonzalez. I'm Vice President and Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Wesleyan University. I'm also an alum, class of '96. Wesleyan is a smaller liberal arts university, meaning that we are a small environment that has some graduate programs where the emphasis is definitively on the undergraduate experience. We're about midway between Boston and New York in the city of Middletown. Our graduate programs are in the natural sciences and math, ethnomusicology, and a couple of other disciplines. We are an open environment, which means that we have an open curriculum. Students don't need to know when they apply or even when they matriculate what they're going to major in or what they're going to pursue professionally. So we really do nurture that quintessential liberal arts environment. We're a member of the NESCAC, very diverse by every measure, one of the champions of access long before that had become an educational buzzword. And I'm thrilled to engage with you all this evening and to have be a part of this deep panel.
Hello, I'm Juliana Staples from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. It's also great to see you all today. Vanderbilt is a liberal arts institution, but also a research institution. So we provide a ton of research opportunities, but within a small, close-knit environment. We have about 7,000 students, about 1,600 first years. Most Vanderbilt students do live on campus all 4 years. We're very proud of our diversity that we're bringing together in Nashville. About 12% of our students are international. About 44% of our students are students of color, and we have students from all 50 states and nearly 80 countries. So that's awesome. In terms of academics, just like most of the schools here, lots of options for y'all. 70 majors and 4 undergraduate schools, including the College of Arts and Science, School of Engineering, Peabody College of Education and Human Development, and the Blair School of Music. We also do have 6 graduate schools at Vanderbilt, including a medical school, law school, and a business school, 2 hospitals. There's a lot going on at Vanderbilt. We have 340 acres of a campus. We love that. It's kind of like the best of both worlds too, because we are located right in the city of Nashville, where there's a lot of opportunities for y'all, especially music. We have over 20,000 concerts a year, so that's pretty fun. So hopefully you will check us out more.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those introductions. And just so you all know, once again, the Q&A function is enabled. So if you have any questions, you have some amazing schools and amazing people from those schools here who are ready to answer those questions for you. So just use that Q&A function and we'll answer some of those. We do have a few questions that were submitted with registration, so I'm going to answer a couple of those. And while we're doing that, as I said, please feel free to start populating that Q&A. So the first question that I'm going to ask is to Amin. So one of the big things that a lot of people who registered were asking were about the changes to the admissions process due to the pandemic. So how has admissions changed, and are these lasting changes?
Yes, thanks for the question. It's a tough one to begin with, but it's obviously critical because we're all wrestling with our own realities. So I would say that the pandemic certainly impacted the admission landscape generally, and more specifically in ways that we could have anticipated, right? One of the things that we know is that it exacerbated inequities. And the big conversation has been around test optional and sort of the shift in the processes at different schools. But I think beyond the test optional development, I think it humanized a process that had long been opaque and mysterious, because we were on these Zoom calls with one another, having cats, cut across our screens and children screaming in the background, and really made us keenly aware of the reality of the fact that we are people, we're whole people, and that admission officers are in fact human beings who wrestle with their own challenges and try to center student wellness and make informed choices. So the process varies from school to school depending on their size, their selectivity, their kind of institutional priorities. But because we weren't traveling and because we knew student experiences were so significantly impacted, whether you were a large school or a smaller school, it really did, I think, put a premium on a holistic admission process of trying to better understand where students were coming from, right? And how their experience, achievement, and potential was going to find expression. So I do think that there were, I don't believe that we'll ever go back quite to what it used to be. One of the consequences of the test optional development was increased applications, right? And we also saw a number of students in the spring of that 2020, late March 2020, who would have been in the class of 24, 25, take gap years. There were a number of gap years that had enrollment ripple effects, right? Because none of us had a crystal ball to anticipate whether it was going to be safe. How do we approach things like travel in a residential community? So there are lots of different aspects of this. I think the toll that it took on different individuals is important, but I don't think we ever go back, in part because we've seen families make good decisions with sight unseen, meaning that for the first time ever, the class of 2025 had their entire college search, application, and matriculation process virtually. So they made decisions to enroll, like many international students, without having had the benefit of that experience. And so in admission, we've expanded our reach to reach more students in farther field places through technology, and more families have found us. So it's changing the dynamic of the way we receive, process, and act on information. I think there's some really good developments, but I do think there's some real significant challenges as it relates to artificial competition, increased selectivity, and shrinking demographics and other factors that we're going to have to continue to monitor and be responsive to. But it's exciting that in Challenge, we have a chance to look critically at ourselves and think about what our core values are and how we deliver on the promise of higher education. Are we engines of opportunity, or are we just going to continue to do more of the same because it's what we're familiar with and what we need to do to enroll our classes?
Thank you so much, Amin. So I saw that, or I heard you touch upon testing, and I see a couple of questions in the chat now. So I'm going to actually ask this next question to Daryl. So the question is, if a school is test optional because of the pandemic, is it actually test optional, or should we send in scores anyway?
This is a great question. We get this from students all the time. And I often tell them that test optional means this. You want to do some research for your school and kind of see where their mean is for standardized tests historically, and even in the past couple of years. And if your test score falls within that top portion of what they would normally get, submit your scores. It will help you. If your test scores don't fall within that range, do not submit them. So to make it short and sweet, to give a summary, if you have good test scores, they will help you. If you don't have the best test scores, they won't hurt you in this case. And I think that's the best way I've been able to outline it for students. And here's another thing. One of the things that test optional has done is it kind of has probably moved a lot of schools test mean up some, because those that would normally submit that were on the lower mean and haven't submitted. So what you're seeing is a bit of a, I won't say inflated number, but it's a little bit souped up because those that were typically on the lower end haven't submitted their test scores recently. So it does give you a clearer picture of what a competitive test score would look like at that school. So still take the test. I recommend that for every student. Still take it if you have access. That's important because you could score really well, and it could put you in a position for a lot of different opportunities when it comes to merit and even more competitive scholarships within the schools. And if you score well, use it. If you don't score so well, don't use it. That's what test optional means. I will give this one other little caveat, because I think this is important. Doesn't happen at the University of Delaware. But when you are completing the test and they ask where you want to send it off, and you pick and select schools, they will send the scores to those schools. And then when you complete your application and you go as test optional, it will come up. However, typically for slate schools, you can still see the scores that are sent. And on occasion, again, not at the University of Delaware, you may have a biased reader who may, even though you said test optional and they have access to a score that's not really good, it may sometimes influence their decision. So my other secret tip when it comes to test scores is don't send them anywhere straight from the SAT. You select the schools you want to see your score. Even if you anticipate scoring well, don't select any from the day of test to send them to. You choose later which schools you want to see your test scores and which ones you don't, based on how well you did.
Thanks so much, Daryl. So another question that came in, I'm going to throw this one over to Susan. So the question is an applicant who explored their interests for a longer period of time seen as a better applicant when compared to an applicant who just recently started exploring their interests? It's very similar to a question that came in about a student saying their extracurriculars are very random and lack focus, and will that hurt them in the admissions process?
Right. Thanks. That's a great question. I would say two things. I say, when you talk about exploring your interests, I think the important distinction to make is whether these are academic interests or extracurricular interests. Now, for example, Olin we only offer majors in engineering at Olin. We're a small undergraduate institution. So truthfully, if you come to Olin and you decide, oh, I really don't want to study engineering, there's not another option for you here. So I would say it's somewhat different if you're applying to a specialized kind of place. and if it pertains to your academic interests. That being said, if you think about your your extracurricular side of things, exploring is always good, right? Any of us who read applications know that they're coming from 17 and 18-year-old people who are just at the beginning of their lives thinking about different opportunities. And so part of the high school experience is looking around and seeing what you like and trying lots of different things. I think the other piece to remember is when we're looking, especially in holistic admission, which excuse me, not Daryl, somebody talked about before, I can't remember who, but everything, what holistic admission means is that everything is important. So it's not the fact that you've done this particular activity necessarily, but it's what that has kind of revealed about you, perhaps. Like if you've tried a lot of different things, maybe we can surmise as readers that you're, eager to be a little creative, or maybe to be sort of like a risk taker in a good kind of way. It's not the fact that you've done the same sport over and over again necessarily that is important. It's kind of what that persistence tells us. You stuck with something, so that shows us that you're very committed as well. So I think that, and the same applies to other ways to spend your extracurricular time. If you have a job, that obviously tells us something about you, and progressive levels of responsibility is something that obviously is very impressive. Or perhaps you have obligations to take care of your family. You have a younger sibling that you need to look out for after school, or you help somebody at your church with gardening or whatever. Like all those things in and of themselves are not important. It's what that activity tells the admission committee about you. So that's how we look at it. So frankly, no, if you try a lot of different things in high school, that's great. Like that's really great. And I would not be worried about that. Certainly not at a place like Olin, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. So kind of going off of that, I want to pass this question over to Veronica. One of the students talked about struggling during the pandemic and not being able to find extracurricular activities outside of school and outside of the home, obviously. But how much emphasis do schools really put on extracurricular activities?
Sure. I think one of the things I want to remind students and families is that the admissions counselor reading an application has kind of lived the same life for the last 2 years, right? I used to volunteer with an organization I loved. They're just opening back up tentatively this summer. So I haven't been able to do it for the last over 2 years. So remember that the person reading your file has great context for your life because they've likely been in the same position, right? There have been inconveniences and changes. We know because we have also been living it. So I think there's this real level of not just sympathy, but now empathy for everyone's situation. I think what colleges are trying to gauge when they ask about what you do outside the classroom is to get a sense of who you are as a person. What do you like to do when you have it available to you? How do you spend that precious spare time when you actually have it outside of the work that you have in high school or things you do for your family? A lot of it can be done outside the classroom, even in normal circumstances, right? If you write a novel every November, or if you babysit your brothers and sisters, like whatever you do, you're showing us that you can balance out your job, which right now is school, with the rest of the things that you have in your life. And that's something we think about. Admissions counselors are trying to tell the future, right? Like, who are you going to be on these residential college campuses where you're going to balance out your job, your school, and then what you're going to do outside of school, because college is not all school. So just know that whatever outside of the classroom engagement has shaped out to be in the last 2 years, number one, your readers are in the same space. They know exactly what you're going through, and they're thinking about that within context. And know that all types of engagement is valuable. It's not just stuff through school. It can be anything that you've been able to choose to do on your own. And that's valuable too. It still shows that you are creating that life balance that we're all still aiming to achieve.
Thanks so much, Veronica. Another question that's in the Q&A right now that I'm going to ask Juliana to take is, what exactly is demonstrated interest, and do colleges look at it?
Great question. So I think most of you are picking up on We're going to keep saying over and over again, it depends on the institution, it depends on the college, and that is definitely true. While that might sound like more work for you, we would like to remind you that thankfully a lot of these things are very easy to find with a quick Google search. We want this information to be readily available to you. For instance, if you Google demonstrated interest, you might find a list of schools. If you Google certain schools and institutions, you will find out if they recognize and utilize demonstrated interest in their admissions process. It's usually a very clear yes or no. For example, Vanderbilt does not utilize demonstrated interest in our review process officially, but for those institutions that do, you will want to demonstrate that interest. The second thing that you will want to research is how to demonstrate that interest to the institution. That can often be in a variety of ways. And I love to tell you that in this new time, a lot of the ways are going to be the traditional in-person visit or seeing that admissions counselor on the road, but also virtual options are going to be very, very open to you. Things like attending this sort of session, a session with that institution, could be an information session, could be a virtual tour. So those things are going to be many, many options that you have, because we want you to demonstrate your interest to schools that care about demonstrating interest, but we also want to level the playing field and have a variety of ways for you to be able to do that, some of which are going to be completely free. So hopefully that helps y'all to hear. If you ever have specific questions, I would definitely recommend, again, checking that institution's website and or finding your admissions counselor.
Awesome, thank you. So there are a couple of different questions that have come into the Q&A, once again, around that engagement around extracurricular activities and how they're valued. So Amin, so one question is about a student who's first gen and low income. They want to know, how would they be viewed by admissions if they don't have many APs at school, and most of their extracurriculars have to do with helping their family business and helping their mom and grandma even during the summer?
I really appreciate the question because it resonates so much with what Veronica mentioned earlier about it resonating with us in ways that are deeply personal sometimes, having gone through that. So I was a first generation low income student to college and had similar sort of challenges around choices. And so what I would say is that you've heard us use the language already around holistic or contextual, meaning we understand the specific circumstances that students are applying from. We use all of the information that you tell us about yourselves, your essays, your recommendations, your transcript, your curricular list, and triangulate all of that. So to those who much is given, much is expected. And if there's no opportunity to take advanced placement courses or IB or more rigorous courses, you're not expected to be in them. You're expected to make the most of what's in front of you, right? That could be extracurricularly or academically or personally, but we're not going to compare students or schools, one school to another. We're going to look at the student in that specific environment with what's on offer and try to gauge not just the production, not just what you've done, but what you could do with the resources and the opportunities that we provide you. And that's where I would say here, what's most critical for underrepresented students, no matter their background, is to understand that in this process, it doesn't reward the modest. That doesn't mean you have to be arrogant, but it does mean that you have to paint the portrait of yourself and give us the information we need to better understand you. If it's, I'd love to do theater and sports, but I'm working a job, I'm the second shift from watching my siblings. It's not that I'm not interested, it's that I'm not able. And that's not an excuse, that's an explanation. So we try really hard to empower students with not just the vocabulary, but the opportunity to understand that they can give us their full, authentic self, and we will better understand where they're coming from and make appropriate choices based on that. So, you know, that being your own best advocate is critical, and understanding that we don't admit schools, we don't admit programs of study. I've never admitted a school. I've never admitted the AP, the IB, the French Baccalaureate. We admit students, and each student's experience is specific to their circumstance and their reality. So the more we understand about them through their counselor, through their own sharing of their experience, the more informed our decisions will be.
Thanks so much. So there are quite a few questions in the Q&A right now about essays. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask Veronica to kind of touch on this, but then I want to open it up to a couple of other folks as well, because it seems like there are many questions about it. So the first question that I'll ask Veronica is, can you share your thoughts on personal statement college essays and supplemental essays? How should students approach these, and what are the best tips to keep in mind while writing them?
Sure, I love talking about the essay part of the process. So not all colleges will ask for a personal statement or essay. If they do, that means it does matter to them. They won't ask you for anything that doesn't play a part in their process. A personal statement, let's say you're writing the main personal statement, you're choosing from the prompts in the coalition application that can go to any of the coalition partner colleges. The personal statement is about you. What can I share about what's important to me, what I care about, what I value, how the way I think about something has been shaped, something that's important to me, something that I love. You're going to pick a topic, you're going to write about it to give the person reading your application a window into who you are. So a personal statement is about you, the person applying to the colleges. Some colleges have what's called a supplement. They will have additional questions that you have the privilege of answering. It's more writing, but it's a good thing because the college is saying that they want to use these extra pieces to continue to get to know you, and then also specifically know about whether or not you would be your most happy, well, and successful at their particular type of college. A very common question on a supplement is for a student to answer like the why this college. Why do I want to go to UChicago? Can I say that in my own words? And what do I know about the school that tells me I could be happy, well, successful at that school? And then they could ask a variety of other kinds of questions based on their strengths, their goals, how they were founded. I mean, they're putting something about their values in their questions. I'll use UChicago as an example. I said we asked some really fun, weird questions. We do that because we believe that kind of one of the hallmarks of a liberal arts education is that out of the box thinking, right? How can I examine and be excited about talking about a question that doesn't necessarily have a right or wrong answer? So you see a college, they have a supplement question that's kind of fun and weird and different. They value different creative thinking. So before you ever answer those supplements, remember that while a personal statement is about you, a supplement's really about the college. How can I show that I'm a good fit? How could I maybe identify and then connect with their values and strengths? It's a really good window into who the college thinks they are and who they think they serve best in the process.
Awesome, thanks so much. So I'm going to kind of use that same one because a lot of the questions are talking about how much the essay is weighted in this process. So Juliana, in your opinion, what are the most important factors that weigh the most on admissions counselors' minds? For example, what is like the relative weighting of GPA versus essays versus activities, those sorts of things?
Okay, yes, we get asked this quite a bit. I think hopefully a lot of you are going to be aware of this answer, but some of you are probably hoping I'll say something super, super specific. There is no super, super specific answer, but good to know that we all look at holistic admission typically. So that means we're going to take in all the things that Derek said into account. So also Amin Cardiff has already told you a little bit about how we look at academic achievement within the context of your high schools. So example there would be like, we look at what you're offered at your high school and then what you chose to take. So it always makes sense. It's always what is possible within the context of your individual high school. And we do have students applying from all across the world, from thousands of different high schools, every type of school you can imagine, every type of curriculum that you can imagine. So in this way, please know that we will, yes, look at your GPA, which is one of the things that Derek mentioned, but also rigor of curriculum, grade trend. Have you been doing really well your 4 years of high school? Have you gotten even better grades as your classes have gotten harder? That's called an upward trend. Kind of a lot of the things that are a little bit behind the grade point average. Did you take a really, really hard class? Did you take a tough curriculum? That sort of thing. And then the other one is, how do we compare that with extracurricular activities, essays, recommendations, some of the more intangible parts of the process? It weighs differently for different applicants. But in a holistic process, we're always looking at all of the things that you bring to the application, all of the things that you would bring to our class, our community, our institution, and trying to take all of that into account. So please know that we do review your applications. We spend quite a bit of time looking at all of those pages. We want to see all the different facets of what you would bring to our campuses. So that can weigh differently. You know, some of you have already asked about activities and what kind of thing matters. I think it's good to remember that we do look at that really widely, whether your opportunities are in the school and there are school clubs and school organizations, or if they're completely outside of school, community service, community involvements, part-time job, family responsibilities, any way that you're contributing is definitely something that we will take into account. That can look incredibly different just among a couple of students, much less if you're adding in all of these other things like essays can vary widely, and recommendations do tend to be very positive, I will admit, which is great, good to hear. But we do take, again, kind of all of these things into account within each application within a holistic admissions process, trying to see the ways that you would be the best fit for our class, community, or campuses again. So hopefully that helps you to hear that we always do review all the parts of your application.
Awesome. That actually goes right into the next question that I was going to ask Daryl. So one of the questions that came in was, is there a filtering process based on grades or standardized tests or essay responses that occurs before the essay is actually read by a human being?
So I'll say yes and no, right? So there is somewhat of a sorting filtering. You have to meet, entry requirements, which include, making sure that you reach the appropriate level of math, 4 years of language arts, those important things, right? Many colleges have those minimum requirements. And on top of that, we do look at a certain GPA level, a certain, SAT or ACT level if those are submitted. But that's done by human beings. So it's not filtered out by a computer or a query, or we just kind of drop it at our university. That is read by humans. And that does, in our process, we always have at least 2 readers to an application. So typically the first reader will review an application and just rate admissions. Like, could this student be admitted to the university? And then the second reader will look at the major and look at if it's a good fit overall. So typically the first reader will kind of do the sorting piece, and the second reader will see if they're a good fit for the major. And sometimes it'll go to a committee, sometimes it'll go further. But that's how that takes place. But it is done by humans at our university. We read every single application.
Awesome. Thank you, Daryl. The next question I'm going to ask Susan. So there are a couple of questions in the chat or in the Q&A about rigor of their coursework. So the students want to know how much does the rigor of their courses play into the admissions process, as well as, is there a difference between a student who takes very difficult courses from 9th grade on, or if they slowly and gradually take harder and harder courses as they get to their senior year?
Sure. Yeah, rigor is, again, it's going to vary a little bit depending on the institutions that you're applying to. We certainly look at things in context. So for example, we're not going to penalize somebody who maybe their high school doesn't offer the IB curriculum, and then they haven't taken it. So when we look at a transcript, we're looking really carefully at what's been available to a student at their school. We are an engineering institution, so our minimum requirements are that everybody is going to have had calculus and physics. So that's not going to be true everywhere, certainly, and that's all part of your research as you're looking at your different schools. But rigor, sort of more broadly, again, is sort of viewed within the context of what's been available to you. And rigor definitely, again, speaks to sort of how you approach your work. If you're willing to take a more rigorous course and perhaps, sort of have to work harder and maybe not get such a high grade, that's not viewed in a negative way. I mean, certainly that speaks to your desire to learn more and to work hard and all those things. In terms of sort of the evolution of your rigor, we see that a lot. We see a lot of times students starting, maybe in 9th grade, and they have, because of the way their school is set up or what they are sort of given access to, starting at a general level. And then maybe as they progress through sophomore, junior, senior year, they have access to more rigorous curriculum. So we do see that that's a really pretty typical pattern lots of times. And I think the fact that students are seeking rigor as it's being made available to them, and taking that on is always very impressive to us. And again, we're looking at all of those trajectories as well. And I think it's always important to point out too, when we're talking about rigor, the impact of the pandemic. had certainly effects on many places, many schools, what students were able to do, not only in terms of extracurricular opportunities, but also what was available to them at their schools. And so when we're looking at applications, as Veronica said, we are human beings. We are people who've lived this experience as well, with perhaps our own children who've had these experiences, or neighbors or friends. So we bring to it a great compassion for the limitations that have been placed on people. All of this to say is we're looking at the entire picture, not one grade or one course in isolation.
Thank you, Susan. The next question I'm going to ask to Amin, there's a question about the different rounds of admission. So restrictive early action, early decision, regular. Can you tell us a little bit about those and what they mean?
Sure, absolutely. So there are different programs of application, the most common of which is regular decision, which has a slightly later application deadline, typically sometime in January, could be the 1st or the 15th or another time. Early decision, as the name would suggest, is an early application, earlier than typical. Early action is also early. The main distinction between early decision and early action is that early decision is sort of, to use perhaps a poor metaphor or analogy here, it's sort of a marriage proposal, right? It's a binding commitment and contract. You're saying, this is my first choice institution. If I get in, I'm definitely going. I will not apply anywhere else. I will withdraw my applications. It is a binding early decision commitment that's made. Early action is sort of like dating. You know, you're exploring, you have a preference, but you're not bound. You're not obligated to enroll at that particular school. Restrictive early action, and there are a handful or so of schools that have restrictive early action that really mean that you cannot apply early action to multiple schools. You have to, if that's your early option, you cannot apply to 4 or 5 early action schools. You apply to 1, hence restrictive. If you get in, however, you don't have to enroll at that school. You can still apply regular. You can choose to go or not. That's your call. You're not bound in the same way that you are with early decision. Some schools like Wesleyan have a second round of early decision, which is often not talked about as frequently because it does impact the overall enrollment. So ours and many schools like us have a later early decision round. That's January 1, and students find out in mid-February. Early action can be November 1, mid-November, typical notification sometime in December, thereabouts. It varies from school to school. You can do your research. But the second round of early is important, and I don't want to take too much time on this topic, but it is important to share. Too often I hear students talk about early as an avenue, as a strategy to gain admission to the more selective school, rather than I've identified a first choice. I have a clear front runner school that resonates with me. And then the next question, here's the takeaway. So here's the money shot. Do not apply early if you're not going to present your strongest application. It's not the number of people who apply. It's not the probability of admission. It's when are you going to present your strongest application. So ED2, January, means I can get my senior grades in. If I have to test, I get another crack at testing. I have time to write a more thoughtful essay, maybe to secure stronger recommendations. So yes, it's a little bit later, but I'm putting forward my best application. If I rush out the door in October, November, and I don't do that, I might meet with some disappointing news. So that's a lot of information to digest. I recognize and I apologize for it, but it is important for students to not think about this strategically, to think about it more about maximizing their own fit to a particular place and presenting their best application.
Thank you, Amin. So you had mentioned letters of recommendation. So this next question is for Juliana. So there are a couple of questions about recommendations. So can you send multiple letters of recommendation and do they actually get read? And then at the same time, should a student just try to get as many recommendations to you as possible? Or do you have a recommendation on how many recommendations they should send?
Great question. So one of the things I always tell families is that we have a record of someone who sent 27 applications and recommendations to Vanderbilt. Please remember that the people who are reviewing your applications, as a couple of my colleagues have stated, are humans. Please consider us in this part of the process and send, I'd say, fewer recommendation letters. A typical kind of spread is many institutions ask for 1 counselor and 2 teacher recommendations. So that's 3. Most of us completely understand if you know your college counselors well, that again might come down to context. You have a small class size, you might know your college counselor. But I want anyone in the room to know that if you have not met your college counselor, that is totally fine. If you go to a larger high school and you don't have an individual relationship with that person, that is fine. The college counselor recommendation is usually doing a lot of the higher level type of information for us. They are sharing a lot of this context that we keep mentioning with us. Do you have a limit on the number of APs or IBs? What is offered in terms of curriculum at your high school? College counselors share some of that information with us. So you could see where that would be valuable in the process, but you can also see where that would be the same across, again, if you have a small school or a large school. Okay, then from your teachers, we hear about you individually in the context of your classroom. Maybe they've had you in class for an hour, 2 hours a day. They know you pretty well as individuals. So they'll tell us great stories about what type of student you would be in our classrooms, what type of person you would be in our communities. So that's amazing. Teachers really do give us a lot of information about you as a person, and they really do help us to learn more about you. It's one of the best parts of the process because you choose 2 academic core teachers. They say amazing things about you. We get to learn more about you, which is what we are genuinely trying to do. So that's all great. If you do submit a couple of more recommendations, I would say keep it to maybe 1 handful. One reason there is because we start to see repetition after that many. 3 is plenty. 3 is a great way to get to know you really, really, really well. We'll start to hear the same things about you because you are you. So people will pick up on those aspects that make you you. Across this many, we will tend to have heard it about that many times. So that's kind of my advice there. If you want to send a couple more, they would usually be from someone who knows you in a different way than your counselor or teachers. Maybe like a spiritual leader, a community service leader, a research leader, someone who knows you kind of outside of the classroom and outside of that school context possibly. But it could also be a coach, a few different opportunities. If you have specific questions about can this person submit a recommendation, I would really ask that individual institution, but this is sort of the general guidelines. Thank you for caring about us.
Thanks so
Can I
much.
add something just really simple to that?
Yeah.
One of the things I recommend to students is, yes, pick multiple people to write letters of rec. Maybe pick 5, but then from that, you pick the best 2. I've never read a negative letter of recommendation of the hundreds or maybe even thousands. So they're all going to be positive. So just reading how great you are over and over again doesn't help. But having a letter of recommendation from a comp sci teacher, if you're going to be an engineering or a comp sci major, that makes a lot of sense, right? Or having a recommendation that talks to maybe something really specific and really unique about you. But if you're going to get 5 letters, you don't have to send us all 5. Send us the best 2.
Thanks so much, Daryl. The next question I'm going to ask to Veronica, and it came in through the chat, and it's what advice do you have for someone who is feeling overwhelmed and anxious about the application process?
I know it's a very confusing process. You've now heard us say several times, or I've also written several times, it depends. Like there's no standard answer in this process. So it's very difficult. I will say as a whole, the dust will settle. Like you're gonna find great colleges, you're gonna find one to go to. Like for most students, this process works out really well. I would say that one of the easiest ways that the students I work with find to calm down is to kind of stop listening to the noise. So you have a lot of noise around you, people who have opinions about test scores and which round you apply to and which schools are worth applying to and what major you should have. It's really about closing out the noise, taking a moment to be introspective and say to yourself, like, let me be honest with myself. What do I need, again, to be happy, well, successful going forward? You're going to clearly come out with a couple of things that are absolute needs. Like I need help covering the cost of college, or I absolutely need to be at a school that offers me these great engineering majors. You're going to find maybe 2-3 things that are deal breakers, needs, and you can build out a really great college search process by doing that. And that way, any of the colleges on your list, you'd be happy to go to, no matter which one is admitting you and funding you and giving you those opportunities. Yeah, I think you need to take time to be introspective, get to know what you need to be happy, well, successful. You build a list around that. And you stop listening to the noise. Like, who cares what everyone else thinks about the colleges and the rounds and the test scores. Like, get it good advice from the right people who know this process, and then know yourself and build your list based on that. You want to end up at a place where you will be happy. I can talk all the time about how happy I was in college. I think that's why I work in college admissions. But that comes out of like a thoughtful, introspective process. Just stop listening to the noise. Just stop listening to all those people.
Thank you, Veronica. So a lot of the questions that I've been seeing as well are questions where students are asking about a specific activity that they do, whether it's a job or anything like that. So Susan, I know one of the questions that came in before was, do colleges care about my part-time job that I have in the summer? And like I said, there are different iterations of those similar questions. So can you ask, or can you answer that? So do you all care about what students do?
Well, again, I guess it goes back to that same conversation about extracurriculars. I think if somebody has a part-time job as a lifeguard and they started out, at one level and they've had progressive levels of responsibility, that tells me a lot about somebody. It tells me that they're committed, that they work hard, that they are responsible, that they can take on additional challenges. I mean, all of that bodes well for your success in college, right? Those are all really good indicators. Likewise, again, sometimes your summer job is part of your larger story. Some of it is sort of helping us understand the context that you come from, your journey through your high school years, sort of as that pertains to the rest of your family. I know somebody else, one of the questions cited specifically working in a family business. That again that's an important part of someone's story. So we care about it in that respect, as it sort of conveys more information about you, and as it's part of the larger story that you want to tell about us. What my colleagues have said over and over again, which I think is so important to reiterate, is that this is a personal process. This is highly personal to all of us, and it's really personal to the students who participate in it. And we are very mindful of that. And so, yeah, your summer job matters because it's something that matters to you. So if it matters to you and it matters to your story, then of course it matters to us as well. Whether you're working, at McDonald's or as a lifeguard or as a, unpaid babysitter at home, that's not the important part. The important part is how it fits into your larger story about yourself that you're going to tell us.
Thank you, Susan. So the next question I have is for Amin. There have been a couple of questions that have come in around creating a college list and how many schools to have on that college list. Can you give us some advice on how to create a college list and how many schools we should have on it?
Sure, and I'll sort of nod to Veronica here, who I think said and set the tone appropriately, is that it's impossible to know 4,000 colleges and universities across the country. It's a much more realistic and reasonable expectation to know yourself. First know thyself, a little bit about what your needs and wants are. And in terms of the volume, the number of schools and where they fit, I think that's driven in part by, considerations like, the quality of advising that you're getting, whether you're applying for financial aid or not, and the range of schools. But generally speaking, it's old wisdom, to have, in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 schools, that if you're getting into every school you apply to, you're not being ambitious enough. If you're being rejected by all the schools and you're not being realistic about it, right? You want to meet with a range of options, and 10 to 12 is not unreasonable, especially with coalition apps and common apps and other ways of simplifying the process. But you don't want to artificially inflate the pipeline by throwing random applications out there because it's easy. So the goal first has to be to better understand yourself, what you need and what you want, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Identify that core set of things and be realistic in that regard, and then try to have, for example, you wouldn't have all schools that are uber selective, be your 8 to 12 schools. That's just not a realistic proposition for any candidate, regardless of test scores, abilities, right? The school that so unquote, quote unquote, fits the profile of a safety, which I don't use that language anymore, a safety school or a probable school or likely school even, it's important, and this doesn't get enough attention. The students who, if they look down their nose at the schools that are likely for them, they're not really looking to enroll at that school. So that's a wasted application. What good is it to apply and get into a school that you have no intention of ever going to? You're taking a spot away potentially from someone else for whom that's going to be their ambition. That's going to be their hopeful reach institution. So there are consequences to this process. I would say in summary, identify needs and wants and keep your list, to somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12. And of course, finances play a factor if you're getting fee waivers or you're paying out of pocket, the counseling that you're receiving, all of that. But there's no need to have 25 schools. As we've seen, there's no good reason to apply to all Ivies or all NESCAC or all schools of a certain type. That's just not a smart way of approaching the process. And I'll conclude with this. If students aren't able to make some distinctions, not absolute distinctions among the schools they're applying to, meaning I throw spaghetti at the wall and I apply to all these schools and I don't make any distinction of one from the other, and you treat them like any other place, understand that we're all looking at thousands upon thousands of applications. And so if you're not making an effort to try to understand us even a little bit in terms of who we are, what our values, what our programs are, you can't then expect that you're going to be considered so favorably in a way that gives you preference if you're not demonstrating the same commitment to establish that match. Does that make sense? Without burdening the student too much, to say you have to do the minimum research to find a point of connection and be appropriate as an applicant.
Thank you, Amin. The next question I'm going to ask Daryl. So I've seen a lot of questions in the Q&A about how do I differentiate myself or how can I be different? What advice do you have for students as they are thinking about this admissions process and possibly thinking, how can I differentiate myself in it?
Awesome. So you've heard it a few different ways, a few different times, right? So one of the ways that differentiates you is, believe it or not, rigor. That really impacts how your application is evaluated. So if you have the opportunity to take more rigorous classes at your high school, we recommend that you take those courses. So I think someone else had asked earlier in the chat, do you look at maybe a B in an AP or IB class and in a better light than you would maybe an A in a standard course? And I would tend to say yes. So that's one way to differentiate yourself. Another way to differentiate yourself, we talked about how students, explore and are, trying to figure out things. However, if you do have an extracurricular that in some ways aligns with your, intended major, that does differentiate. So an example would be you being captain of your local high school or community robotics team, and you're applying to be an electrical or mechanical engineer. That differentiates you, right? That stands out. That shows us a different level of commitment to what you intend to study. Other things, included in those extracurriculars, also stand out. I want to say, and I'm sure looking at the other colleges on the screen, we see a lot of supposed 4.0 GPAs. We see a lot of 3.6s and better. So it's those things that really help you stand out. It's those things that really help to differentiate you within the application process. And also understand that if it's important to you, right? If it's important to you, and you don't have to be an all-state football player, an all-state athlete. If it's important to you and it's something that you excel in and something that makes you light up, one of the phrases I love to hear that my niece used to say, it makes you come alive, then that's what we want to hear about. That is what's going to differentiate, right? That thing that makes you light up, because we can hear it in your writing. We can feel it in what you write about when you're lighting up, because it comes across so clearly. So that will differentiate you, no matter how corny or quirky or geeky you might think it is, no matter how much you may hide it from some of your friends. If it makes you light up, that's going to differentiate you, and that's the person we want to know about.
Awesome, thank you so much. The next question I'm going to ask to Susan. I've seen this question a couple of times too, and it's about dual enrollment versus AP and IB. So can you just give us a little bit of advice or a little insight into if a student has the choice of taking AP and IB or enrolling in dual enrollment at a local community college, how they should make that decision?
Oh, that's a tough one. And again, that's going to vary, I think, tremendously from institution to institution. For our purposes, we're kind of looking at what's the hardest, what does your school offer? And what is sort of like, the hardest level. In some schools that will be that dual enrollment opportunity, and other schools it will be the AP. in sort of some fewer instances, it will be the IB. So I wouldn't say that one is necessarily better than the other. I mean, if you are presented with all three opportunities, then you're certainly a lucky person to have all those choices, I would say. And you're probably going to be able to, that any of those would demonstrate a commitment to rigor. So I wouldn't necessarily, I would say, I think the only, the nature of the IB program is a little bit different, I think, in some ways. That's more of a philosophic kind of conversation. But I think that I know for us, we would regard them all very similarly in terms of rigor.
Awesome, thanks so much. So I know that we are coming close to time now, so I think we have time for about 2 more questions. So the first one I'll ask to Juliana. So how would an admissions officer determine whether or not a student who attends a low resource school, no AP, IB classes, and other opportunities is academically fit for their college or university? And are there certain types of schools that prestigious colleges just don't admit students from?
Yes, a great question. Thanks, Derek, especially because I have been seeing this a lot in the chat and Q&A. So Amin also talked about this earlier, and a few of us have mentioned context over and over again, but I'll go back to that. We do a lot of looking and pay really close attention to learning about your high school and the individual opportunities that are offered there. Susan also just discussed it. We will know, if your school offers AP, IB, dual enrollment, or all three, or 2 of those, or they call it the Wildcat curriculum, whatever that it is called at your high school, we will know that and be aware of that. Now, moving on to high schools that have none of those. There's no class that's got a specific name. There's no honors, there's no accelerated, there's no advanced placement. That is okay. There is still definitely space for you at these institutions. We want diversity of perspectives on our campuses, whether that means your background, and that could mean your high school. That could be in a new high school, an international high school, a home school, a small school, a big school. We want this type of diversity on our campuses as well. So don't be worried to apply. Please know that, in fact, we encourage you to apply, and we will know what's offered at your high school, including if that is no rigor, and that is okay. And I also came from a low resource school and was able to go to Vanderbilt as well.
Thank you, Juliana. And the last question that I'm going to ask will be to Veronica, and it's, how much does my choice of major play into the admissions decision? The student said they're not sure what to major in, so asking should they read up on a few potential majors?
It's very normal for high school students, for college applicants, to not know what they want to major in, what they want to do for their job after college. That's normal, and every college is going to have great people within career advancement offices who will help you connect what you like and what you're good at with things that you can do after college. I think in terms of the application process, this will depend on the type of school you apply to. For most liberal arts colleges, let's say you're applying to a standalone liberal arts college, a university's liberal arts option. Liberal arts, by definition, is just this love of learning. And at most liberal arts colleges, you won't even pick your major till you get to that college and start sampling courses. So if you find that you are in that position, you don't know what you want, you're not sure yet, you may find yourself with a college list that is a little bit more heavy on the liberal arts side. Colleges where you don't have to pick a major upon applying, or don't have to apply to specific programs. Because that's the other side of this. There are many colleges and universities where you do apply to a specific program of study. So I am declaring already now as an applicant that I want to be at a school that offers only engineering, or that I'm applying to a music conservatory and I want to become a performer. Like I'm making the decision. So this will depend. If you find that you're in that place where you like a lot of things you haven't picked yet, that's normal. And for most colleges, especially liberal arts colleges, that's to be expected in their process. And for other students, if you already know what you want, that's great. Like you can go ahead coming in the process knowing. But this will depend, as many things, on the colleges that you put on your list. But it's okay to not know.
Thank you so much for that, Veronica. So we are right at the hour, but I did want to ask if you all could drop your contact information for your office, so that the students, if they have any follow-up questions, that they can reach out and contact you. But also, just so you all know, we do have a couple more events this summer going on, including one that's an interactive kind of classroom style. That's going to be a meeting where you'll be able to meet directly with admissions counselors and ask some of those questions that you might not have gotten answered tonight. So I believe that just got dropped into the chat, so be sure to sign up for that. You'll be able to talk to more admissions counselors and ask them your questions directly.